Welcome everybody to the third installment of the Ultimate Killer Guides. Today we are going to be talking about the Vomimommy, the Plague. Now, Plague is a rare killer to come up against in Dead by Daylight, which I personally think is a bit of a mistake, as she's quite strong with the right builds and the right mindset. So today we're going to talk about everything you need to know to be a good Plague player. Let's begin with the Ultimate Plague Guide. Now firstly, let's start with her perks and add-ons. Now the Plague add-ons, she has a lot of add-ons that complement her well. She has hardly any that really weaken her or aren't worth running at all. Her best add-ons for me personally increase the effectiveness of the Vile page, which are all called emetics in one way or another. Another good choice too are any of the amulets, which increase how long the Plague's corrupt page lasts. Rubbing oil, which increases charge times on Vile page, which is another personal favourite of mine. The apples that grant you extra corrupted fountains at the beginning of the game, the seals which increase infection duration on objects, whether that be gens, windows, pallets, item chests, lockers, the full lot. And lastly, her iridescent black incense, which is absolutely crazy on her. Any of these add-ons are absolutely great. The other ones are okay too, but I'd say these ones are the ones you want to be sticking towards. My personal favourite combo is Vile Emetic and Rubbing Oil for fast infections and charging times. The other add-ons, yeah, you can honestly take them or leave them. For perks, I'm once again going to be recommending 4 builds for 4 different playstyles and skill levels. For high ranks, run Discordance, Ruin, Undying and Retribution. Puke on gens to stop survivors working on them and let Ruin Undying work its magic. Retribution for great information when paired with Undying, and Discordance for knowing which gen to pressure and which survivors to infect if they are already. This build is what I use to win 69 games in a row with Plague, so it is stronger than it may seem at first and especially stronger when you're used to running it. For newer players, run Corrupt Intervention, Infectious Fright, Bitter Murmur and Spies from the Shadows. Both Corrupt and Infection are Plague's teachable perks and they are insanely strong. Corrupt being one of the best perks in the game. Block off gens and vomit on the rest. Then with Spies from the Shadows information, start to infect and down survivors, applying pressure with Infectious when you can. Bitter Murmur also helps with information and it is quite a strong little beginner build. For a build to help punish the infected, run for Hanatophobia, Hysteria, Discordance and Pop Goes the Weasel. For Hanatophobia is great for punishing survivors that don't heal or granting more corrupt pages if they do heal. Hysteria punishes the infected with them being oblivious, and Pop Goes the Weasel with Discordance is great for keeping pressure on gens and still getting information. And lastly, for an insanely aggressive Plague, run both the Apple add-ons as well as Infectious Fright, Lethal Pursuer, Pop and Deerstalker. With Lethal Pursuer, try to infect as many survivors as possible as the start, or use a Corrupted Fountain and immediately go on the aggressive. Down survivors and instantly know information about the rest, and for extra pressure, never lose anybody with Deerstalker and Pop for consistent pressure on gens as well as survivors. So now we've talked about her perks and add-ons, now it's time to talk about her power. Now, the Plague has a great power in the fact that whether survivors choose to cleanse or not, she is still extremely effective. If none of the survivors cleanse, then everyone will be broken and the chases will be a lot shorter, or if they do cleanse, you have access to many pools of your corruption, which is amazing. It's basically the Plague at her strongest, but both work. With regards to her power as well, some newer Plague players may not know that you don't have to fully charge the page in order to use it. Half fills are probably used more than full charges. The benefit is that it's a faster time to use the page, but at the cost of the amount that you produce. A great way to use Plague optimally is to charge it a bit to infect them, then M1 them as normal instead of trying to apply Broken with your page and then going for an M1. You also want as many survivors infected as possible, so if you have 2 survivors who aren't infected, try to infect one of them immediately and chase the other. Also, unless you're chasing a survivor who is running in a straight line, aim slightly in front of them as opposed to where they are. You will hit a lot more of your pages by doing this. Remember as well that Plague's page lasts on interactable objects, so don't forget to vomit on loops and pallets to punish survivors who are trying to stay healthy. Try to force them to become infected or take them away from the loops. This works especially great at places like Shack. And as I said before with using her power, try not to rely on it too much, especially when the survivor you're chasing is already infected. A guaranteed hit is better than adding 50% infection to a survivor that you're already chasing who's infected. So that's covered a lot of Plague's power, now on to some general tips and tricks to help with the Plague's mind game and her general playstyle. Body blocking with Plague is one of the best ways to get free downs with her. Blocking a survivor in a corner or a small dead end, fully infect them with your power and down them with M1. This is fantastic as normally you would M1 hit and they'd be able to run through you, but since you're using your Vile page, they still have collision and won't be able to leave. Body blocking with Plague grants immediate pressure when you can. Try to push survivors into open areas whilst you're chasing them for easier infections and when you're corrupt, for very easy downs. And if a survivor is looping you around a loop that you can't infect them easily, either infect something that they have to interact with and force them to use it, or give up the chase. Spending too much time trying to infect a survivor that can loop a plague well will cost you in the long run. Instead, infect the gens and other survivors so that they can't advance the game much without risk becoming infected anyway. If a survivor has some distance in front of you, arch your shot so that the page lands further away. Also, flicking side to side quickly can increase the spread, which really helps and can lead to some insane downs when used correctly. Only activate corrupt page if you know where the survivors are. Don't waste your potentially your only fountain without knowing where to immediately pressure. You want to use this as best as you can, and you need the information to do so. Your page will travel through survivors and hit multiple people at once. This works extremely well if you're close whilst unhooking or grouped up, even more so with corrupt page, although please keep in mind that you cannot hit the same survivor twice with one page charge, no matter how much you think you should, which is once again why smaller charges are sometimes more effective. If you've hooked or downed a survivor who isn't infected, you still can just vomit on them whilst they're on the hook or on the floor and it will still infect them, although the bar won't start to charge until after they've been unhooked or picked back up. This is still possible and it's 100% recommended. Do this whenever you can. As it stands, Plague is quite an underrated killer which you can actually use to your advantage, as many survivors don't know how to cleanse or when to cleanse or what's best to cleanse against the Plague. I've noticed people can really struggle with the Plague's pressure when it's used correctly, so use this to your advantage to try and catch survivors out. Don't stop a chase or go out of your way to acquire corrupt fountains. Only really use them if they're insanely close to a chase or not too far away that you won't be able to lose too much distance, as this can waste a lot of time for the Plague, and also you could waste a lot of the corrupt pledge by picking it up, trying to find the survivor again, walking over and then getting to use it. It's not really worth it, so only use it if it's dead close to where you're being looped. Don't be afraid to try and infect or hit survivors through small nooks and crannies. For example, through the planks of the window of Shack, vomit can go through quite a bit, so try to catch survivors off guard with a risky page every now and again. Also, with practice, you will be able to do this more effectively and to know when. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again, you have to infect gens as often as you can. This pairs amazing with perks like Corrupt on Ruin, as it makes the start of the game harder for survivors to pressure gens, and Plague struggles at the start. You're basically forcing the survivors to either become infected or to give up that generator and go elsewhere, which is fantastic for pressure. This also goes for lit totems as well, if you have any, just a small little layer of protection on them and a little bit of information if somebody tries. You only need one small blob of the corrupt page to injure a survivor, so spraying it is more beneficial than having to be more precise like with the normal page. Try to cover as much of an area as you can while spraying to get easier hits and faster downs. Aiming page can be tricky with the way that page is used, but aiming left or right of a survivor whilst they're going around a loop can be beneficial, as you're more likely to hit where they are going rather than where they are. It's kind of tricky to explain my point on this one, but hopefully the visuals kind of help with this one a little bit more. Don't forget to keep your eye out for your fountains as well. Noticing when and which fountains are being used by survivors gives you free information and can be critical in the late game when there are less survivors alive. So to be honest, that's pretty much everything I can think of to try and help you use your power effectively and to start improving with it. But honestly, Plague does have a learning curve like with most killers, so the more you play her, the better you'll become. But keep in mind what I've said and trying to implement it into your own playstyle will hopefully really help speed the process along. Now for the survivors, onto the ways to counter the Plague. Now Plague is a tricky one, as there's no definitive answer to whether you should cleanse or not and how. It all very much depends on what type of Plague you're up against, but with these tips hopefully you'll last much longer against her. Firstly, with regards to cleansing against the Plague, you want to be cleansing ideally after the first 3 gens have been completed. Plague is weakest at the start and at the end of the matches, so not giving her power for the middle where she is the strongest is really essential. But if you have to cleanse, make sure you're either as far away as possible from her, and preferably cleanse in a dead zone or near a completed generator so that the Plague will have to go out of their way to get their power, which, as I said earlier, makes it much trickier to use. Don't infect gens if you're broken and a healthy survivor is working on one. Try to remain as healthy as you can for as long as you can can really damage the Plague's lethality. So even if you think you might be able to get more work done on a generator, potentially breaking a great player and putting them infected will significantly help the Plague. So stick to gens that are either already infected or, if you can and it's the right time, cleanse before you do work on it with a survivor. Try to loop the plague around loops with very high walls, and try to break line of sight as often as you can. The main goal for the plague is to infect survivors, so if you're looping around a loop that she can't be easily infected by, you're going to be wasting her time, which is amazing to counter her. Also, using height to your advantage. The Plague is one of the tallest killers in the game. She's so tall that you are able to see the top of her head around some certain high loops. Use this so you can easily see when the Plague is trying to mind game and double back, and then counter her from this. If a lot of survivors are cleansing, cleanse yourself. Trying to cleanse all fountains will give Plague her power instantly, but she will lose all 6 corrupted fountains hurt her in the long run. So if there's only 2 fountains that needs to be cleansed and there's 2 infected survivor, cleanse them, give her a power, you've just taken away 5 of her other powers. Stunning the Plague with a pallet when she has corrupt purge will instantly end it, so if you can try to break line of sight and stun her to weaken her instantly. But be careful, because if a Plague expects this, she can prepare around it and get an easier hit when you're locked in the animation of dropping a pallet. Also, if the Plague is in her corrupt form, similar to Oni, sometimes it can actually be beneficial just to hide and waste it and wait until it's over. And lastly guys, if you were infected and you can, don't run. Walking to a safe space or away from danger can be good as it won't increase your infected timer. Running and interacting with gens and totems, for example, will increase your infection rate. So guys, there it is. Thank you all so much for watching. I really hope this helped. Please don't forget to like and subscribe for more killer guides. I'm actually really enjoying making these, and honestly you guys seem to be enjoying them as well. I've already started to work on the next, but you'll have to wait a touch longer to see who that one is. I'm going to try and be faster with these, but I can't rush them as I want to give genuinely good advice, and I don't feel like I can do that without putting time into the killers and seeing how they work and how is best to use them. But yeah, guys, once again, thanks for watching. That's everything from me today. Take care. Bye bye for now.